Scary Alvarez is back. I know that those weekends can seem very long, and the cravings can run very deep when there's not a new Scary Alvarez. I mean, what was even going on this weekend? Was there anything that was happening for football fans? I can't even imagine. But anyway, welcome aboard. I always appreciate seeing you here. And today's going to be a show about the NFL draft, and specifically how the NFL draft applies to the Wisconsin Badgers. And before I get into this year and my larger conclusions about the trends and what they mean, and just as importantly, what they don't mean, I want to congratulate a couple of guys. Hunter Wohler eats, sleeps, breathes football since he was a kid. Just love to see him get drafted. And you know, many of you may have noticed, and it's not to say if you don't do this, anything's wrong with you, but the kid out of Wisconsin Badger shirt on when he got drafted, it's just the consummate Badger, like the next guy I'm going to talk about real quick, bridged the gap between the Chryst and Fickell program, did everything he could to bring success to Madison for both programs, and unfortunately had to bear the brunt of a very difficult few years for Wisconsin football. So congratulations to Hunter Wohler. Jack Nelson, also fantastic work. Congratulations. Was there anything more Wisconsin Badger lineman than him being interviewed by the Atlanta Falcons correspondent on the day he was drafted on State Street, throwing a couple back with his offensive line fronts? That was just fantastic. I love seeing that. Jack is, of course, a friend of the show, and we're very happy for him to get his career started down in Atlanta for the Falcons. So congrats to those guys. Congratulations also to a couple former Badgers, Graham Mertz. A trivia question, it'll be one of many quarterbacks who went ahead of Shedeur Sanders. He was drafted by the Houston Texans. Great to see. And he can reminisce with the current starting quarterback of the Houston Texans, C.J. Stroud, about that classic Badger matchup with Ohio State. I think it was 52-21 down in Columbus. Some good memories for both, I'm sure. J.K. LOL. And also congratulations to Chimere Dike. He went the highest of all former Wisconsin Badgers. I know he also went to Florida and played with Graham. Good to see him go, and when he did, I think it was at the top of the fourth, one of the first picks of day 3. So great to see that too. Even if they didn't end up as Wisconsin Badgers in their collegiate career, it's nice to see them, going on to greater things. Also, a number of tryouts and UDFA contracts for Badgers all over the place, but so I don't want to leave anyone out here. I'm not going to go through everyone, but congratulations to everyone who has taken this and will continue to pursue their NFL dreams beyond the Badgers. By the way, if you're this far, please drop on Scary a like and a subscription. Again, we're getting videos from Bulgarian wedding videos from 2003 in your algorithms before old Scary Alvarez. Let's change that. We can do better. Really appreciate it. So back to the Badgers and what it means. Having 2 draft picks, both of them late. I've already talked about why I think these guys were underdrafted, but that's neither here nor there. Where are we as Wisconsin Badgers? There are a few. There's kind of a range of opinions over the Badgerverse. Some of them are the typical, fire Fick types that, oh, look what happened. Luke Fickell took over the program. Now we have no draft picks. Okay, others are, this is just a transitional period. We're starting to get some recruits in. Fickell's going to make his way, and we're going to start having draft picks soon. They're hybrids of those. I tend to be the second one, but let's quickly examine the first one. That things were humming under Paul Chryst, and Luke Fickell taking over the program has ruined our draft capital and status. Clearly, that's preposterous, because as much as I like Paul Chryst, and as much as I acknowledge the early to middle part of his career at Wisconsin, he was churning out draft picks like nobody's business, doing a great job, sending a bunch of dudes to the NFL. I mean, I don't want to, lessen or undersell just how solid that Chryst was in that department, a lot like Bielema was, Alvarez was, putting guys in the NFL. But whether it was COVID or I'm not sure, we can. That's another show as far as the reasons. But it was clear that the program was in a decline towards the end of the Chryst era, and recruiting was no exception. And NFL draft stuff was no exception. That was all going to kind of follow together. So in his last 2 years, we got Chryst in the 50s and 60s in recruiting rankings. There's a corresponding eventuality that's going to happen. It's going to spring for those sorts of things. And then you have a transition to a new regime under Fickell, and he doesn't get his first class of guys he's recruited until the 2024 class. So Chryst has had two classes, 2024, 2025. Okay. Chryst had freshmen this year playing. There's nothing, Fickell had freshmen this year playing. There is no Luke Fickell recruit who is even close to draft age at this point, or who would have been anywhere near this year's draft. That is going to come into focus soon enough. We're going to see whether these top 20 classes, and Fickell has 2 top 20 classes in 2 years. Clearly, there's been an uptick in recruiting. There's been an emphasis on projectables, larger defensive backs, NFL-type guys. We're going to see if that's going to play out. We don't know that yet. There appear to be a number of guys in this room. One of them was Kevin Haywood, who we lost to an ACL injury, unfortunately, this year. But you can see the green sprout shooting through of guys who project to be good college players and then hopefully correspondingly good NFL prospects. Okay, that is a TBD right now. But one thing is clear, and to anyone who is trying to blame this on Luke Fickell, you're barking up the wrong tree. Who's trying to blame the lack of recent Wisconsin draft success on Luke Fickell? This isn't Luke Fickell's fault. You can only play with the clay you have in the room. So I just want to properly orient the expectations and properly, it's not blame, but it's to explain how we got where we did. The end of the Paul Chryst era, giving the baton to the beginning of the Luke Fickell era, there's a little bit of a talent vacuum there. It's just a fact, guys. It's not that there aren't good players on every one of those teams. It's not that there isn't NFL types on all of those teams. There's never been a Wisconsin season where there hasn't been an NFL type player or 2 or 3 or 4. Maybe we had Braylon Allen recently. It exists. But there is nothing even remotely shocking about there being only 2 Badger draft picks this year. I happen to think they were underdrafted. I said it before. But the reality is the results on the field, game by game by game last year on a 5-7 team, yeah, that tracks, guys. The year before with a pretty relatively easy schedule, finishing with 7 wins. I know that was a transitional year too, but there just wasn't enough talent in the room. Okay, so you go before last season, you go and you do your best to reinforce your linebacker room and get Jahem Thomas from Arkansas. So a really, really, by all accounts, solid SEC performer. Comes in, whatever the reason, doesn't do incredibly, and the guy's on a tryout contract as a rookie. There wasn't the same amount of talent on that team to expect a bunch of draft picks. And it's where we are. So I think that is an accurate assessment of why no one from Wisconsin should be shocked right now that we're not turning out NFL draft talent like we were in 2020, 2019, 2018, 2017. Okay. The talent in the room has not been good enough the last 4 or 5 years. It just hasn't been, guys. Nothing shocking about it. And again, my goal here is not to put this all on Paul Chryst. I love Chryst. Chryst had great success at Wisconsin for a number of years. He is already in the clubhouse as one of the best coaches in Wisconsin football history. It's a fact. He had ran a really good program for a number of years. Also a fact, it had fallen off mightily. Okay, I know COVID has a hand in this, but by the end, he didn't like the NIL and transfer recruiting stuff. He was kind of done with the guys. I don't know how to say this in a way that's doesn't sound mean. I like Chryst. Guy's still not coaching. I mean, there's nothing about this era that appeals to him. I know he's tried to put his hand in a couple rings for jobs, but the reality is he's a talented enough coach where he could be coaching right now if he wanted to be. And for anyone who is saying, well, Jimmy Leonard would have been fine with it, I feel like a very tenuous how that would have gone situation as well. For a guy who didn't have any head coaching experience, for a guy who has since settled into a positional coach in the NFL, done a very good job of it because he's a really, really good defensive mind. There's nothing to suggest to me, to be brutally honest, that Jim Leonard was poised to be a successful head coach in the Big Ten in the NIL portal era. There's just nothing there to suggest that. I hate it. Sounds mean. He might have been. It's possible. But Luke Fickell has CEO chops, and he's struggling a little bit with it. So I don't know. It's kind of wild. It's all wild. And this is just an opinion. Y'all might feel differently about this, but I keep seeing, oh my God, what's happened to Wisconsin under Luke Fickell with the draft? What are you even talking about? I don't know what, like, he moved into a house, and the house had a bunch of flaws and termites and was rickety, had some nice bones, but there were issues. And then we're saying that, the house isn't on a Better Homes and Gardens tour now because of Luke Fickell. I don't know, guys. I feel like the next 3 years or so are going to be very, very interesting. But, as I keep saying, this was the canary in the coal mine of how the talent and how the structure of the program had declined at Wisconsin. But by 2022, we had a former offensive lineman coaching running backs. That is where we were before Fickell took over. It was just things weren't going well, guys. It was heading down, and I made no bones about this. Seeing people on the boards and on Twitter saying that we should have stuck with Chris or Leonard and Fickell's been a disaster is such revisionist history as to where it was. And it's not my goal to, again, Chris had a great program for a long time. I'm proud of him as our coach. But by the end, it was failing. The road was rotting, and it was not going to work in this era. It was not. Chris gives us Fickell gives us a fighting shot. I'll say that. And the results are TBD. But 2 top 20 classes in a row in his first 2 classes with the kind of long-rangey athletes with upside and potential that NFL teams eventually like. Let's see what happens, guys. I mean, there's a lot of football left to be played. Obviously, in 2025, the whole season is ahead of us. But his recruits are just going to finally be getting their teeth wet. Teeth wet? That's a new one. So I'm here to propose that, yes, we are in a down time right now for Wisconsin NFL talent. There is no argument for me there. But there is potential. There are some green shoots sticking up through the concrete that suggest to me that if things go right, and it's got to go right in the games, you got to retain the guys. You got to keep bringing talent in. You got to keep doing, look, the 26 class right now is a little, we'll see. The early 26 class isn't quite what 24 and 25 were, but 25 started slowly as well. End up with 10 4-stars. 24 at 10 4-stars. We were getting, one 4-star type player in some of those later Chris classes. I know we had a couple good seasons in the recruiting things, but as we now know, even the top Chris classes, some of the guys he was getting were just the head of recruiting was chasing stars, not chasing fits. And that ended up kind of panning out that way. Logan Brown. But anyway, hope everyone's having a good day. And there are other shows for how spring practice ended and how the team's looking, and I'll hit all of those. Right now, I just wanted to dig into the draft a little bit. Love to hear your opinion on this. Shoot me your opinion on down low, and Screw Alvarez out.